Good afternoon. Is everyone awake?
I think so.
We've got one pulse.
We're awake.
Okay, there we go. It is actually, and it's pretty easy in this climate to understand where the siesta came from. The only thing that's difficult to understand is why it was so short. It should be like 6 hours. You know, in talking to various people in the hallway here for the last couple of days, this reminds me of a fabulous dinner that I had about almost 30 years ago. And it was in, of all places, Research Triangle, North Carolina. And it was 4 people that had dinner for about 3 hours in a long conversation. And it was Doug Engelbart, Ted Nelson, and Fred Brooks. And oh, what an entertaining time to put that collection of characters together and talk about things. And it occurs to me that we all have that kind of opportunity here this week to meet people that we haven't seen in a long time, or meet people for the very first time, and try to understand their perceptions of the world and things that we can learn from their experiences over time. I get the opportunity to introduce 2 entertaining people, or 2 people that claim to be entertaining. We'll test them out later on. And of course, I know Evelyn from a first phone call. I don't know how long it was before we actually physically met for the first time. Okay, there we go, the answer. But there's various ways that I could introduce Evelyn, but I thought a slightly entertaining way to do it is to open up a book that has an appendix in it that she wrote some time back, and share with you some of the things that, little bits of wisdom that she had in the book, vintage, whatever the date was here. 84, 83, 84, according to the copyright.
I got mine in 83, but they put copyright 84. I don't know. Just like hers.
So one comment here is that she made was, do read the documentation. I don't know why. Before embarking on your first Smalltalk development project, understand the basic language concepts. Whether your development team consists of one person or many, do understand and use the change manager. You're going to find out a little bit later why that was so important. At the outset of a project involving 2 or more programmers, assign one member of the team to be the version manager. Can you imagine?
That was Laura that I talked about later on last night.
And in the course of software development, do modify, key word there, do not modify system classes when subclassing is possible. So for those of you that were into Smalltalk for the first time and saw this class called the class, and thought to yourself, wouldn't it be entertaining if I made a change to the class and see what happens? I used to use that as a interview question for programmers that I was bringing in. Would you please explain to me the class and what happens when you make changes to it? We'll leave that as a test. Browse the system to find existing features that can be exploited in your application. In other words, don't write code that's already been written if you can just simply reuse it. Don't be at the mercy of the system. If you don't like something, change it.
Except for class.
Except maybe for class and a few other things.
There's some classes you shouldn't change.
Do share your creative goodies with friends. And finally, have fun. So, Evelyn has actually been off having fun for a few years instead of writing software. She's been actually in the software business, but it has to do with fabrics as contrasted to software. And she decided it was about time to see what was happening in this community again. And so we thank her for her intense involvement in helping to create this event, and even more so, her skills in keeping track of enormous amounts of information over the years. So, Evelyn, good luck.
Thank you so much. Do you want me to keep for the archives, or do you want that? Your notes.
Well, I had notes from a meeting about 3 years ago with that.
Just as a side note, I was always known as the person to keep track of things at XSIS. Emails, files, presentation materials for my supervisor, Don Stewart, whose office you would walk into, and the desk was piled high, the floor was piled high. He was the nicest person in the world, but he couldn't organize his way out of a box, so he had me for that. And so did the rest of the engineers, by the way. Okay. I'm going to back up a little and just tell you a little bit about my background. I went to USC in 1973 and majored in computer science, and I was only the second class, undergraduate class in computer science that USC had, so of course, all of our classes were the graduate classes, so they just renamed undergraduate classes. And that's one of the reasons I never went to get my master's, because I already took all the classes by the time I graduated. One of the things I did take an artificial intelligence class at USC, because I thought maybe that would be a field I would want to go into. But after the first couple of class sessions, I realized that is not where I belong. I'm a very practical-minded person, and I want to take tools and make the world a better place with those tools. Then when I learned software engineering, I realized that only engineers, or what one of the marketing people I work with called propeller heads, could do it. So I thought my mission in life is to either find somebody who knows how to make computers easy to use, easy to program for everyone, or I would have to try and do it myself somehow, some way. While I was at USC, I worked in the engineering computer lab as a first feeding the punch cards into the IBM 360 card reader. I also punched cards because I could type 60 words a minute. Then, when my roommate and we were the first women to ever walk into the computer lab at USC. And the joke was, well, by tomorrow there will be curtains on the windows, the one little window in the entrance to the machine room. Well, so of course we had to prove ourselves, and my roommate was only 16 and I was only 17. So by the end of the first month, people were, I think we proved ourselves. In any case, we became systems programmers, and I had the pleasure of running the accounting system every morning. And I say the pleasure because I was one of the first people on campus to have a terminal for the DEC 10 system in my apartment, so that I could get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and run the accounting system for all of the people at the university who used the computers. So I got to start using email in 1973 because USC was one of the 10 or so first nodes on the ARPANET. And I tell people that I've been using email since 1973, and they look at people who are not engineers and not in the business, look at me like I'm crazy, like I said it wrong, but I explain it to them. And I explain what the ARPANET is and so on. Anyway, then while I was a senior at USC, I also, in addition to working 20 hours a week in the computer lab, I worked 20 hours a week at Hughes Research Labs in Malibu, where I did image processing research. I was support to the researchers, and I fed the tapes into the drive and processed all the data and prepared it. And actually, that was my first and one of only papers I ever published in my life. I was a co-author on a paper for that project. But when I graduated, they didn't have any openings at Hughes Research Labs where I really wanted to work. So I worked for Hughes Aircraft in Culver City in the trailers for 2 years, where my dad was at the same time working at Hughes Aircraft in El Segundo in the high-rise building. He was a computer operator. So he was very proud of me that I majored in computer science, and he got me interested in it. So I did not like having a security clearance, and when I found out what the image processing work was for, it was scene analysis for bomb assessment. So I said, besides the 40-mile drive through traffic every day, but more importantly, that was not for me, doing software for that kind of application. So I looked for another position and went to the bike shop with my husband. We had bought an Apple II in 1978 when we got back from our honeymoon, because we had money left over. That's how nerdy we were even then. And then we're coming up on our 35th anniversary. Anyway, So one of the people working there worked for XSIS. It was called XEOS, Xerox Electro-Optical Systems at that time. And so he said, we're looking for somebody. So I went and interviewed, and I was hired by the Publishing Systems Department of Xerox Electro-Optical Systems. And I thought, good, publishing. There's nothing to do with government work there. So that was March of '79. But I did, as a condition of my employment, I said, I'm giving up my security clearance and I will never get one again. Is that okay? Okay. They hired me and offered me a very good salary and benefits package. And it was only 13 miles from my home with an easy commute. So that was easy decision. And I got to work on an Alto. Wow. I wanted to work on that Alto so badly because I had seen it when I interviewed at Xerox in El Segundo in college. I didn't want to drive to El Segundo. I guess I would rather drive to Malibu. I don't know. Anyway, so Xerox, March of '79. Then in December of 1979, my coworker Alan Pace showed me Smalltalk. And that changed my life. And so this is the story of what I did from that point on. And I have a whole bunch of documents up on the stage, and I have some here that I'm going to go through in chronological order, and then I'm going to make sure you have plenty of time to come up here afterwards and look at the documents and ask me any questions you want to do. And by the way, I only have a very few slides because I spent all of my slide preparation time preparing the program for last night. So that's my career. The important highlights of that was the 1979 when I first saw Smalltalk and started developing Pub Editor, which was an interactive page layout editor in Smalltalk 76. And I demonstrated to anybody who would walk through the Alto Lab. So I demonstrated to the New York Times, to R. Donnelly, to the intelligence community. Those were the three highlights because all of those led to lucrative contracts. The New York Times was called the EEL system, or Electronic Editing Layout System, and I just now found some documents that talk about that. And then R. Donnelly was a book publisher and newspaper publisher, and I actually got to visit one of their sites and see the huge, giant rolls of paper that they fed into the giant building-sized printing presses. But the intelligence community's demo was the one that led to the longest-term contract, and you all know it as the analyst, the assistant, world maps, and then Humble, and I showed a demonstration video of that, and Georg is going to demonstrate that later today during the lightning talks. So, in 1980 to 83, I transferred Smalltalk from PARC to XSIS. That means because we had these contracts, we needed a stable foundation and we needed somebody on site who knew all about Smalltalk and could maintain it, support it, report bugs, fix bugs in the virtual image and the virtual machine if necessary. And that was me. I said, please. And that's when I bought this poster, because that was my dream, was to make Smalltalk a commercial product internationally. Because I wanted everybody to have it. I didn't want it to just be research, and I didn't want it just to be, ironically, the intelligence community and everyone who worked on analysts had security clearances. In 1983, I had made many trips to PARC because it was like the difference between being in a one-bedroom, old, run-down home and maybe a very brand-new, high-tech home with gourmet food, what was to me gourmet food, free coffee and free stuff, plus a building full of scientists, engineers, researchers, artists, and I was in heaven. So any excuse, and I didn't even like to travel before this, any excuse I had, I would go up to PARC for a day or a week, whatever I could get them to pay for. The rule was I was allowed to work on Smalltalk if I earned enough money for XSIS to pay my salary and my benefits. So I said, don't worry, I think I can handle that. So I was invited to the launch party on April 21st of 1983. Well, because I was already there debugging the Dolphin virtual machine with Kim McCall, there was this stubborn bug that took at least 2 or 3 trips back and forth to fix. But we finally fixed it, and I released, and the books, the Smalltalk books are up here. These 3 books are my personal copies that I never actually used and read. I had other working copies that I could dog-ear and do whatever I wanted to. These are the ones that were autographed at that event. Or I think the green book was later, but feel free to look. Okay. What else do I have? This is an interesting document because when I was in the Publishing Systems Department, I forgot to mention, I actually, between March and December, I actually worked on the software that was used to hand edit the fonts for the new Xerox laser printers at different and for the screens, for the Alto screens, 72 dpi and 300 dpi. And we had an artist in our group who knew how to hand edit fonts and made some of the most beautiful fonts. But this is a document created by Xerox called Visual Design. And it's about how to lay out documents and how to make them look good and how not to use 15 fonts per page. Stick to one, you know, those kinds of rules. And this is how I learned publishing, graphic design, layout, that sort of thing. So you can look at that. Oh, and I wanted to mention, this is the PARC sign from the other room. I loved working with PARC. I wished I could have worked at PARC, but I lived in Southern California. My husband had his own company. So I left Xerox in 1992, and he didn't have any contact with PARC until early this year, and I talked to Dave Robson and said, do you think that PARC might be willing to sponsor this event? After all, PARC did invent Smalltalk, and this is the 30th year. And he said, let me talk to Steve Hoover, the CEO, and he did. And Steve Hoover referred me to Amy Hallman, the new marketing director. And PARC is a sponsor for this conference as a result. So my dream has come true 21 years later. I'm associated with PARC again, but in a completely different way. So, all right. 1984, well, 1983, Tom was the first commercial customer, and he was the primary beta tester outside of XSIS of that version. And we had a lot of phone calls back and forth. And then the fully released, documented marketing material version was in 1984, and that was in March. And it ran on the Xerox 1100 workstation, which was the Dolphin. The 1132 was the Dorado. And then later on, we had the 1108 Star workstation, and internally it was also called Dandelion or Dandy Tiger. It was developed in El Segundo. But what I did is I had to take the virtual image from Glenn Krasner, and it was the version they were using in the it was first LRG, Learning Research Group, then they were renamed to Systems Concept Lab. And I took that and I looked at the code. And it wasn't very consistent, so basically I touched every class, every method, made everything consistent, put comments in, and made it something that other programmers, especially programmers who were new to programming in Smalltalk, would understand and would make sense to them, because it was pretty rough and rugged code at that time. So I spent a lot of time on that, and the beta testers, especially Tom, were very helpful in finding the bugs and making suggestions. So in 1984, we released customer version 4. You remember PARC talked about version 1 and version 2? Well, I named ours CV3 for customer version 3, or commercial version 3, and CV4, commercial version 4. And then in 1985, I started working on planning the first OOPSLA conference, which was OOPSLA 86. And I met a lot of the people at this conference. At that meeting, there were 14 people: Tom, Adele, Dave, who else in the audience may have been at those meetings, the planning meetings? Of course, Alan. Rebecca, did you come to any of them? No. Okay. But I distinctly remember at one of the early meetings planning what we were going to do, and I said, we have to have tutorials. People want to learn this stuff. And they said, we don't need tutorials. We all know how to do it. And I thought, well, how are we going to get more people in the OOP community unless we teach it? So they said, don't worry. We'll let you do it on this condition, that it doesn't affect the budget. I said, don't worry. I will do it. I work for Xerox, so I can get everybody's bios, their photos. I can create a tutorial notebook for the conference. It won't cost you a thing. And that will be Xerox's sponsorship of the conference. So here it is. Some of you are probably in here. I'll let you look at this. There are quite a few tutorials. But I wanted to make sure that people's pictures were in here. Because I looked at a lot of other documents, and there's the abstract and the bio, but this has a picture too. So I think that's probably the most interesting part of this document. This is Kent Best, by the way. So take a look at that. This side of the stage is international stuff. Fuji Xerox and Georg Hieg, there's a paper from you or a document there, and various people. This is the domestic side. PARC. Okay. Now, I had to give training classes in Smalltalk. I even did some in exercise, and then I had to go back east to Xerox's training facility in Leesburg, Virginia, and give a week-long course in how to program in Smalltalk. And I asked who was going to be in the class, and they said, we're not sure yet. And when I got there, I found out that half the people were engineers, software engineers, and the other half were managers who were going to make the decisions on whether they were going to buy Smalltalk for their programmers. So picture a week-long class, and I created the whole curriculum geared towards software engineers. So I had to think fast, what I did, Kurt Schmucker was there, and I'm trying to remember who else was there. But he was already knew a lot of the stuff and was having a grand old time programming, and he said, don't worry, I'll help the other engineers if they need help. I said, thank you. So then I could focus on the managers, because after all, if you don't sell it to the managers, they're not going to buy it for their engineers. So then after that experience, I created the Manager's Introduction to Smalltalk 80. And I looked at this, and there are some interesting charts in here that I compiled. One of them is the products, price versus performance. And this builds on what Alan, what you were showing yesterday. It shows the Dorado at the top. It's at 100% of, everything was a percentage of Dorado in price and performance. So we have it was the most expensive and it was the fastest. So it's over here. And then we have, let's see, we have Apple Lisa here. And we have Apple Mac way down here. And then the Dolphin, just for reference, we have the Fuji Xerox Kiku workstation in here. Tektronix 4404 is right there. But anyway, come look at it. The Dolphin 40 megahertz is here. So you can see on this side this is price, is the vertical, and the horizontal is performance. So take a look at that. And there's another one which rates. This is, I don't know how I came up with this idea. Maybe someone else's idea that I stole. I don't know. But it's programming environments. Commercial object-oriented programming environments. It lists the company, the language, like Smalltalk 80, Objective-C, Classical, Neon, different versions of Smalltalk, loops, methods, flavors. It lists the hardware and a description of maybe the version number or a description of what it is, like it's an object-oriented force or whatever. And the competition level. Okay, this is a number from 1 to 5. Competition level means, now this was worded very, very carefully. XSIS's assessment of customer perception in the current software marketplace. Because you can imagine if we put things on this chart and our competitors don't agree. So I kind of wrote it this way so that nobody could say we're lying or we're exaggerating. I just said it's what the customer perception is in our assessment of it. It's fine.
So is one good?
One is at the bottom, and I have symbolic flavors. And at the top, I have Xerox Smalltalk 80, the Dandy Tiger, the 1108X license version 2 is number 5. Number 5, let me read the number 5s. I had to put the Xerox, there are two number 5s. I had to put Xerox one first because I wrote the document. But then the second one is Tektronix Smalltalk 80 on the 4404, 05, 06 license version 2. Okay, and then after that is PPI, Objective-C, as on Unix C systems. And it's described as object-oriented C, and it's number 4. So I don't know how Come look at this. This is fascinating. Those are the yellow section. And of course, I always have been into color. So each section is a different color. So you can find yellow. Okay. Now, well, then of course we had OOPSLA in Portland, and I did the tutorials. I organized the tutorials. I organized our booth demonstrating Smalltalk. I think we were demonstrating Analyst. And most ACM first-year conferences lose money and are expected to because, you know, you have to build interest in a conference. Well, OOPSLA 86 made huge profits. They had, I think they were planning for maybe 500 people to come, and there were, I think, 2,000, was it 2,000 people came? And what put it over the top in terms of profit, made it profitable, were the tutorial sections. Unfortunately, I'm not listed in the proceedings anywhere as a tutorial chair because that wasn't a recognized function at that time, and neither was it in '87. And in '88, I did publicity. I didn't do tutorials anymore. So in '80, you know the rest. The other dates are obvious. But let me talk a little bit about, and I showed this last night. And this is on the stage. And I wanted to show a picture of the pin, which you've already seen. I have one up here, the original Smalltalk pin, and Kurt Pearsall. Kurt Pearsall is the one who did the demonstration video, and he's the one who, someone said to him, of course we worked our offices were next door to the people working at Interlist D, the AI folks. And so they challenged Kurt, our group, or Kurt specifically, threw down the gauntlet. I bet you can't implement an expert system in Smalltalk. And he says, give me 24 hours. So the next day he had Humble. And what is the reason it was called Humble? Because he went around telling everybody after that it was the greatest thing in sliced bread. So I decided, I said, okay, we're calling it Humble. And Kurt is now at RICO, and he's the head of a major lab, and they've got some major new products, and he responded to some of my earlier emails, but he's been too busy to come. But I'm going to try and contact him again, and I did send him a link to the video so he could view it again. But then the question becomes, how do you advertise an expert system shell in Smalltalk in 1986, and your marketing budget is about $1,000 a year? What do you do? Because I was never given much in the way of a budget. So I heard through the grapevine that AI Expert magazine was going to be published in October of 1986, the same month that OOPSLA 86 was held. And I said, aha, first issues, usually they're scrambling for advertisers, and I'll be one of the first people to ask to advertise Humble in there. So I think it cost $1,000. That was my budget. And so we did a half-page ad, and it's called Rule-Based Technology for Smalltalk 80. Here's the half-page ad. This is the cover of the issue. And you can come look at that. It says more bang for the buck is the marketing tagline. And I think Kurt wrote this whole ad for me, did the screenshot, and that's how we did it for $1,000. And this is the same video that I showed last night, so I'm not going to repeat that. But at this time, does anybody have any questions about, I did not work directly on developing the Analyst, but I created the stable platform upon which they built Analyst. I provided the stable virtual image and the virtual machine for the Dolphin. I did have to debug with Kim's help at PARC. I left Xerox in 1992. At this time, I'd just like to answer any questions that you have, and I would like you to just come up and feel free to look at any of these things. Yes?
Do you have an estimate up through the time you've left how many D machines of one sort or another that SSIS sold to?
Well, they estimated some number, and I think that number ended up being 5 times what they estimated for the first few years. And I seem to remember a number in my head of $20 million in revenues, See, I was told to make enough for my salary and my benefits, but I worked with some other people who were doing marketing. For the D machines were to sell Interlist D. And then the office, the Dandelion, was to sell the office software.
Yeah,
The Star.
I think specifically.
So we said, can we please add Smalltalk as an option for $5,000 or whatever the cost? I have the price list. There is a binder up here with the price list from at UPSLA 86 of everything, of all the products that we were selling in software. And I think there's one that shows the hardware prices too. But 90%, now Interlist D was bundled with the workstation, with the Dolphin and the Dorado. The Dolphin was $50,000. I don't remember how many were sold, but I also know that 90% of the people who bought the Dolphin paid an extra $5,000 to get Smalltalk. So.
Do you remember how many organizations you were providing support to, specifically for Smalltalk?
No. And they're probably in my files, which I had 10 boxes of those kinds of files, and I stored them at my husband's company, and he sold his company 8 years ago. And he says, what do I do with them? And I go, I guess you got to throw them away. I hope I didn't have the box of 6 blue books over in his office. I'm hoping they're still in my storage area. I had 6 boxes at home, the really important stuff. But I don't know. And I bet I could find out. If there's a real interest, that's part of the history. But let me talk about that for a moment. Throughout this whole process, I contacted Grady Booch, who was on the original UPSLA Planning Committee. And he was from IBM, and he's an IBM fellow, but he's also on the board of the Computer History Museum. And when I saw that, I found almost everybody I connected with on LinkedIn, which is a fabulous tool. At 3 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep, I would take my smartphone into the other room so I wouldn't disturb my husband, and I would research, and I would go to LinkedIn, and I would do Google searches, and I did whatever I could and followed every link. And saw Grady was Computer History Museum. I said, aha, we're doing a history event, we need to contact them. So I did. So I got approval to use anything in their archives for this event. And Grady Booch has a website called Computing the Human Experience. And on one of the pages, and by the way, it's purple, the home page is purple, and that's my favorite color, so I told him that. And then he told me that his wife is a quilt artist, and that she dyes fabric, so we had that connection. Because I used to do quilting, and I'm a fiber artist. Mostly I do knitting and crochet now, and I'm wearing one of my bracelets, my son. Anyway, so I said, Grady, can we, get access, can we talk to the Computer History Museum about this event? And then they said, we have an oral history project, and we're thinking if we can dig up the budget for it, we're going to send somebody to the conference to interview people here who are non-Silicon Valley people, because obviously they're in Mountain View, they can just go interview Silicon Valley people anytime. But they thought maybe there would be a good concentration of people they could interview for their project. However, it didn't happen because I couldn't provide them the list of the attendees, because that information is confidential. And I told them who I thought was coming, but they couldn't find it in the budget. However, they did provide some of these videos, and they will in the future. Grady said, I'm looking for people to write books about the history of computing. And I emailed him back, well, I can do the history of Smalltalk. I've already started. I kind of started for the conference. And I said, but I don't want it to be a quote book. I have a website which I started on last year on the anniversary of the launch party, April 24th of 2012. I had my husband, who's a webmaster, register the domain, smalltalk80.com. Believe it or not, no one registered that domain. Well, Smalltalk80 was pre-internet, so I guess, anyway. So I said, well, that website should be where all this information resides, the links, the videos, the whatever, the artwork, the music, anything having to do with Smalltalk that people have done over the years. So my mission now is to work on a Smalltalk history project. And after the conference is over, I'm going to email everyone and solicit information, anything I can get that is interesting, and put together like Wiki Smalltalk on that website. My husband's an excellent web designer, and if I could twist his arm enough, he might be willing to implement whatever I want. So that is a plan. That is the good news. This conference is not the beginning and end of our thinking about the history. It's the beginning. And that's the reason I wanted it. There are several reasons to do this. It's fun to look back, and you can learn from mistakes of the past. It's fun for us to get together and reminisce, and it's fun to collaborate, because I'm sure that a lot of people are getting new ideas just from talking to others. Just by saying some words about what you're doing, it makes you think about it in a new way. And I've been teaching all my life, and I'm teaching knitting and crochet right now, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But this should be the beginning, because I noticed in my research there are big gaps in the history from what I was able to search on Google. For example, I know this may sound a little selfish, but I wanted to know what happened, what was recorded online between 1983, when I started, releasing Smalltalk and marketing it through Xerox, through all the Xerox companies, and what happened after 1988 when PARC Play Systems spun off. And I found almost nothing out there. I never published. I went to UPSLA. My IMP stuff was not recorded by ACM and other people. And so I figured, if that's true for me, then think of the hundreds and maybe more people out there who have stories to tell and artifacts and archives that they haven't looked at. And maybe we need to capture that information for posterity. So there's another reason, and that is I would like to start a fundraising for scholarships in software engineering, because I've been kind of upset about the state of it, and there are some really great things going on in software engineering right now, but there's also some horrible stuff they're not doing enough engineering is part of the problem. And so I think we need to get more people who, what they call computer science or software engineering is often not those things. And so we need to make sure that people are educated properly in how does a computer work? What is an operating system? What is object-oriented programming? What, good practices. Some of the things I'm hearing, I'm just learning what Agile means. I'm learning what Scrum is. I've asked Jeff McKenna to give me a quick tutorial on those things. I've heard this, I've heard that. So I wanted to, find out more about it. So that's. Any other questions? So my new career. Well, last year what got me on the road was on February 14th was Valentine's Day. It was my 20th anniversary of leaving Xerox, and a friend gave us the Steve Jobs biography, and I read about, the Adele Goldberg demo to Steve Jobs. All the memories came flooding back of things that happened back then, so we created Smalltalk80.com. Contacted Tom first. Tom was the first person I looked for. And I talked to you about the idea, and you liked the idea and gave me some more ideas. And I found Adele and emailed her, and she suggested that I contact Georg. That Georg still had conferences going. I said, wow, because literally I had no idea if Smalltalk was still in use when I started researching this stuff. I had no idea. And when I found out it was, and that, quote, Smalltalk is cool again, I was very happy. So that is what is happening in the future from my perspective. Any questions about anything?
Over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ted.
So, is it possible for you to tell us the URL of the video of Xerox Smalltalk being demonstrated, part of which was shown last night?
Yes. I have to put it in a place and figure out where's the proper place for it, and everyone will get that link.
Okay, perfect.
It's just going to take some time. It was a VHS videotape that hadn't been touched in 21 years. And my husband managed through, it was touch and go for a while there, but he managed to digitize it for me last week or 2 weeks ago. And then Stephen Pope edited it for me. Steve, are you here? Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you so much for doing that, because it was like short notice, like please help me like quickly, and so it worked. I had never used PowerPoint, never done videos, and all this was new to me. So, yes.
Based on X's perception, why did symbolics end up as a one?
I have no idea at this point in time. We can talk about it, look at the chart and see, and read more of the document, but maybe that was lost in my files that got thrown away. Yes, Steve?
I was wondering if you could talk anything about the desktop publishing or the page preparation act that you wrote.
Pub editor?
Yeah.
Well, I found the user manual, and I forgot to bring it. I didn't bring everything I have. This is only one small set. But basically, okay, think of Microsoft Publisher, but taking out all the bells and whistles, and it's a prototype, so it might crash. But sometimes when I demonstrated it, the crash was a good thing. Well, not the crash. It wouldn't exert the behavior I was trying to show. Is that time?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So I turned fixing the code as part of the demo, and sometimes that ended up being the best part of the demo because people could see how quickly you could fix something and just keep going. I mean, I didn't have to stop and exit, you know what it's like. So then I started demonstrating that on purpose. I would break something on purpose, and then I would fix it as part of the demo. So yeah, so you could have multiple columns, you could have text running around the pictures. It was magazines, so you could jump to some other page in the future, back and forth. It was like that, flowed from page, not in sequential order, but they could be in random order. You could specify that. It was not ever a product, it was just a proof of concept. And that's what led to contracts, to do those sorts of things.
So did you incorporate your own font designs into that?
I didn't design fonts. I did software to support the designer, that he could edit the fonts.
Okay.
But then they became part of the Alto font set and the laser printer fonts. So then I did use them, just like everyone else in Xerox used all those fonts.
Right. Well, so one of the things I've never told you about is that I helped add font stuff to Smalltalk, Smalltalk, and external fonts and grayscale fonts when we had our color machines. And got to work with Chuck Bigelow, who designed the font and look and feel of scientific Americans. Anyway, very interesting. But the font stuff that was in the Smalltalk system that we got was just the launching pad for our extensions to fonts, because we then had to deal with external file system fonts, X Windows fonts, so fonts kind of took off. But there was a good basis there to start with.
Oh, great.
So I was just wondering
Well, and and to this day when I see an ugly font, I just harken back to the day when, I worked with people that knew and I learned what is considered attractive in fonts and what isn't. Yeah, and there's a lot of ugly fonts out there. So I'm teaching knitting and crochet, and it's not as far from Smalltalk as you think, because in designing patterns, you're writing a program, and it's just a different syntax. And I work with mostly women, and they are afraid of math, so I teach them math skills and help them overcome their fear of math. And I'm going to start doing some knitting while I'm around in the presentations and during the breaks, and I'll have some stuff in the break room if anybody is interested in looking at it. And I even have some stuff where you can actually try knitting or crochet and make something very quickly and take it home with you. So, any other questions? Should I leave these materials up here for a while so you can come look at it even through the other talks? Okay. Thank you, everyone.